There's a mystery that rarely gets named out loud. Why do women, across centuries and cultures, so often fall for men who have little to offer but themselves? Not fame, not fortune, just a quiet certainty, a rough smile, and the promise that everything will be all right. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But perhaps that's exactly what some men radiate. Even in poverty, they possess a kind of freedom that cannot be bought or inherited. Picture a city street after midnight, the restaurants closing, neon flickering, two figures laughing under a street lamp. He has nothing to his name but an old guitar, stories from a hard life, and a way of looking at the world that makes even hardship feel like an adventure. She listens, drawn by a spark that money cannot replicate, something raw, present, impossible to fake. It's not about romance as Hollywood sells it. There's a tension in the air, a hunger for something real, for a partner who won't hide behind titles or distractions. Sometimes, the man who has lost everything is the only one left who knows how to give without pretense. Jung might say, only a soul unafraid of its own darkness can walk hand in hand with another's longing. Why does this happen? Maybe it's survival, or rebellion, or the hope that a wild heart can lead you out of your own boredom. Maybe, too, it's a secret craving for authenticity, a life stripped of masks, safe only because there's nothing left to lose. Whatever the reason, one thing is certain. Sometimes, the richest love stories begin with empty pockets and two people who have nothing left to offer except themselves. You wouldn't notice him in a crowd. There's no expensive suit, no polished shoes, no gleam of a car waiting at the curb. Maybe he works with his hands, maybe he carries dust in his hair and an easy shrug in his step. But when he enters a room, something changes. People glance up, not quite knowing why. He doesn't command attention. He receives it, without trying. There's a story old as time. A woman with choices, drawn to the man who shouldn't make sense. He can't buy her gifts, can't whisk her away on weekends, can't promise an easy life. Still, she waits for his call. Still, her laughter is a little softer with him, her gaze a little steadier. Jung would see this not as a paradox, but as a reflection of archetypes at play. The poor man, unburdened by possessions, sometimes embodies the trickster or the wise fool. He stands outside the rules, free to challenge them, and, in doing so, frees those who dare to walk beside him. It's not that poverty is attractive in itself, but that it strips away the distractions. When life is bare, every gesture means more. Watch them together. She tests him with sharp words, waits for him to flinch or chase approval. He doesn't. He listens, shrugs, grins. If he cares, it's never out of fear. If he's loyal, it's not for reward. That simplicity, the refusal to perform, the calm in not needing to impress, is magnetic in a world obsessed with status. Sometimes, he will disappoint her. He cannot solve her every problem, cannot erase the chaos of life with money or power. But he can be present. He can tell the truth, even when it's hard. He can stand steady while storms pass. Perhaps it is this, more than anything, that draws her closer, the sense that with him, she will not be lied to or abandoned for some new distraction. No hero here, and no fairy tale. Just two people, stripped down to the raw essentials. Sometimes this is all that's needed, a life not of luxury, but of presence, patience, and the quiet hope that being seen, truly seen, is still possible. Even when there's nothing left to offer except yourself, there's a memory tucked away, sharp as broken glass, and just as transparent. Years ago, a woman sat in a kitchen with a man whose shoes had holes in them. The fridge was half empty, the bills piled high, but his laughter was whole, unbroken. She watched his hands move, rough, scarred, sure, as he brewed coffee and spun stories about lost jobs, stray dogs, summer rain. There was no shame in his voice, only the raw music of a life that had seen both failure and possibility. She never told her friends the truth about him. They'd never understand why his lack, his bruised ambition, was part of the pull. Some nights, when the city lights flickered, she'd catch herself smiling at nothing, remembering the easy way he made a home out of four walls and a borrowed blanket. In the world outside, wealth meant security, vacations, perfect teeth, plans that reached years into the future. Here, security was a promise kept, a joke at midnight, two hands finding each other in the dark. He was not always gentle. Sometimes, the roughness came out in his words, his impatience with things he could not control. But he always returned. If he made a mistake, he fixed it. If he left, he came back. The rhythm was not steady, but it was honest. It would be easy to paint this as nostalgia, to say love and poverty is only for the young or the foolish. But even later, when she moved on, built a steadier life, she'd find herself measuring other men against a feeling she could not name. It wasn't about money, it never was. It was about the hunger to feel alive, to be chosen by someone who had nothing to offer but the certainty of their own presence. Years passed. The story never resolved. No grand reunion, no secret fortune found. Just an echo that lingered. Sometimes, what we long for is not rescue, but recognition. To be seen in the wreckage, to be wanted anyway. This is the kind of memory that changes the shape of a life, even as it quietly fades. You ever wonder if you felt this yourself? Maybe it wasn't as dramatic as stories from the movies, but maybe there was a moment, just a flicker, when you realized you were drawn to someone for reasons that had nothing to do with their job, their bank account, or even their plans for the future. Maybe you felt safest with the person who had the least to lose, or found yourself returning. Your subscription and comment aren't just numbers. They're signals that decide what video comes next. Share your thoughts or ideas in the comments. They often become the foundation for news stories. Interestingly, over 90% of viewers watch my videos without subscribing. That's okay. It means the content pulls you in. But subscribing helps you stay updated with the next parts. Hit subscribe, and let's create the next video together. To conversations with someone whose life was more mess than masterpiece. Let's be honest. Our world is obsessed with achievement, with the shine of success. But sometimes the real comfort comes from someone who has seen hard times and survived them. Someone whose kindness is not an asset, but a habit built from necessity. Jung believed that the most magnetic people are often those who have embraced their own imperfections. The acceptance of oneself, he wrote, is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. When a man no longer fights his own story, he becomes unexpectedly strong. Maybe you had a friend who didn't fit the mold, the one who made you laugh even when nothing was funny, who showed up at your door with nothing but time and a willingness to listen. Or maybe you were the one who offered a warm meal, a couch to crash on, a word of encouragement at the lowest point. These small moments are where connection begins, not in the absence of struggle, but in the willingness to walk through it together. Some people spend their whole lives searching for security, only to find that what they crave most is a witness, someone to see them, to care without calculation. It's easy to overlook the quiet loyalty of a man who has lost and learned to begin again. It's even easier to dismiss the gentle routine of someone who doesn't dazzle, but who never fails to show up, rain or shine. So tell me, is any of this familiar to you? Have you ever found yourself drawn to someone, not for what they had, but for the way they made you feel seen, safe, even in chaos? Or maybe you noticed the way your heart settled, not when promises were made, but when they were simply kept, again and again. Every story is different, but in the end, the threads are often the same. It's not the wealth or the struggle, but the truth of presence, the strength of quiet constancy that holds people close. It's easy to misunderstand the word charisma. Most people think it belongs to celebrities, leaders, or those with effortless charm and perfect timing. But real charisma, the kind that draws others even in the absence of money or status, is quieter, slower to notice, and far harder to fake. A man who has nothing to prove often has nothing to hide. There's a steadiness in his movements, a softness in his smile, a confidence not built on bravado, but on acceptance. He may not fill a room with noise, but people feel lighter in his presence, as if the weight of judgment has lifted for a moment. Jung might say this is the integration of the shadow, the calm that comes when a man no longer fears his own limits or past mistakes. Women, whether they realize it or not, are often drawn to this quality. It's not a trick, not a performance, but an energy that says, I know who I am, even if the world doesn't approve. This authenticity is magnetic. It allows for silliness and seriousness, for laughter in the rain and silence after an argument. The truly charismatic man listens deeply. He doesn't rush to fix or dominate. He offers the kind of attention that makes a woman feel like the only person in the world. But there's another side to it. The secret in the eyes, the stories half told, the vulnerability that comes from having failed, lost, or started again. This vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a bridge. It signals, you can be real with me. You don't have to be perfect. Harshness doesn't last long around such men. Women notice when anger passes like a summer storm and kindness returns, as the weather clears. There is room for mistakes, for mess, for the tangled routines of everyday life. What begins as attraction deepens into respect. This man will not flee when times are hard, nor become someone else when the world demands it. The greatest misconception is that charisma is always loud, always dazzling. Sometimes, it's as gentle as a hand on your shoulder at just the right time, or the quiet certainty that, no matter how chaotic the world, there's one person who will keep their word. In a world where everyone is busy posturing, pretending, or chasing the next approval, the rarest and most irresistible thing is someone who can be content, not complacent, but deeply at peace with what he has and who he is. Jung would say, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But that is the very source of a charisma that cannot be bought or stolen. And so, the man with empty pockets but a full heart stands out, not for what he owns, but for how he makes others feel about themselves, seen, safe, and suddenly a little more free. There's a house at the edge of a tired town, roof patched with tin, paint fading to gray. In the early mornings, a man stands by the window, coffee in hand, watching the sky change from black to soft blue. He's not young. Lines mark his face, stories etched into skin the way rain carves rivers in dirt. He doesn't hurry. He feeds the old dog, sweeps the porch, tends the little garden with patient hands. His world is not large, but every corner knows his touch. Neighbors pass by, wave or call his name. He waves back, never too busy for a word or a laugh. He asks after their children, their mothers, remembers birthdays and small victories. Not because he's collecting favors, but because he truly cares. Sometimes, the neighborhood kids bring him broken toys. He fixes what he can, and what he can't fix, he finds a way to turn into something new. Inside, the house is spare but full of warmth. Books stacked along the walls, photos of people who've come and gone. The woman who visits most often isn't his wife. She brings soup, sometimes fresh bread, sometimes nothing at all but her tired self and the comfort of shared silence. They don't talk about dreams much anymore. There's no need to impress. Some nights, they listen to the radio, play cards, or just watch the rain. He never promises the world. When she's sick, he sits by her bed, tells the story of a younger self who thought love had to be grand, who once chased things that did not last. He's learned, slowly, the value of constancy, of being the same person on a Monday as he is on a Saturday, of keeping small promises and returning home at the end of the day. Sometimes, the power goes out and the street falls dark. She lights a candle, he finds an old guitar, and they make music from memory, filling the house with something richer than comfort. The knowledge that neither is alone, even in the smallest life. No one writes songs about men like him, but women remember them, long after the stories are over. He's the reason they look for gentleness in crowded bars, the quiet hope behind every search for something real. He will not be famous, but his presence is lasting, like a favorite chair, worn but never replaced, steady as the rising dawn. That's the truth hiding in plain sight. Sometimes what saves you is not excitement, not ambition, not the drama of new beginnings, but the soft, stubborn heart that refuses to leave. In a world of sudden storms, the rarest thing is someone who stays. There are days when nothing goes as planned. The car won't start, the rain won't stop, the job slips through your fingers like water. On those days, a man without money feels the weight of every expectation, every silent comparison. Yet in the quiet between setbacks, a different strength grows. Not the kind that fixes everything, but the kind that simply endures. You see it in the small rituals. He remembers to call, even with nothing to report. He brings her tea, leaves a note on the fridge, fixes the squeaky door. No declarations, no show of heroics, just the soft, insistent repetition of care. Jung would say this is the integration of anima and animus, the merging of masculine resolve and gentle attention. In practice, it looks like folding laundry side by side, laughing at old jokes, holding hands in the waiting room. Sometimes she doubts. The world tells her to want more ambition, more certainty, a man who can promise the future in gold. But late at night, what she wants most is someone who can weather her storms without retreat. The man who stays up when she's sick, who listens to her worries without solving them, who sits with her grief when words are useless. The constant presence, the unhurried patience. It's easy to overlook this kind of devotion. It doesn't sparkle in public, doesn't post well on social media, can't be tallied or displayed. Yet ask anyone who's loved and lost, who's been disappointed by the dazzling or the dramatic, and you'll hear the same story. In the end, what matters most is kindness repeated, the certainty that, even on bad days, someone is there. This is the hidden currency of life together. The small acts build trust, the ordinary days build love. And when hardship comes, it's not wealth or status that keeps a woman close, but the quiet conviction that here, in this house, with this man, she will not be left alone. She will remember this, long after the years have worn everything else away. Some nights, doubts crawl in quietly. The man sits at the edge of his small bed, staring into the dark, counting the things he cannot give. There are bills stacked on the table, dreams half-spoken, promises he fears he cannot keep. Sometimes, he wonders if love can survive so many unanswered questions. He thinks of his father, a man worn down by disappointment, always hoping the next break would come. He remembers his mother's hands, rough from work, gentle in every gesture, never letting hardship dull her tenderness. Perhaps this is where he learned that love is built in the aftermath of loss, that the truest kind of strength is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to keep showing up, anyway. There are moments when he sees her looking at him, searching for an answer he cannot give. Does she wish for more? A different life, easier days, nights without worry? He doesn't ask. He knows that questions like this are often unspoken, carried in a glance, a sigh, the way her shoulders sag when she thinks he isn't watching. He tries to offer what he can, honesty, presence, a kind of stubborn loyalty. He doesn't promise the future, only that he'll do his best not to leave. He wishes he could give more, but he knows the world is full of men who made big promises and disappeared at the first sign of trouble. Jung wrote that every relationship is a dance between shadow and light, hope and regret. In the hush before dawn, the man wonders if being steady, being real, is enough. If the small acts, making coffee, sharing a joke, listening to her fears, might be the things she remembers when the shine of youth has faded. Sometimes, he envies those who can give their partners everything. Sometimes, he resents the stories that say love is only for the triumphant. But mostly, he feels something quieter, a strange gratitude for the chance to be chosen, even with empty hands. There are no neat conclusions. No one writes poems about the ones who stay, the ones who don't run. But he knows that, somewhere in the space between lack and loyalty, a different kind of love takes root. And on the hardest nights, that is enough to keep him going. She stands at the window, light from the street drifting across her face. It's late, and the quiet hum of the city feels heavier than usual. She thinks about all the things she could have wanted. The grand gestures, the safety of plans made far in advance, the comfort of never having to count the coins in her purse. And yet, she stays. What holds her is not excitement, not the promise of more, but the stubborn gravity of someone who never leaves. She remembers the early days, the hunger, the fear, the jokes made to keep the dark at bay. Even then, she knew he could not give her the world, but he gave her his time. When she was sick, he was there. When she doubted herself, he listened, really listened, without turning away. His presence became the anchor in her drifting life. Sometimes, her friends ask her why she stays. Don't you wish for something more? They say, always gently, as if her answer might crack under the weight of their concern. She shrugs. There's no easy way to explain how much it means when someone cares about your headaches and hopes, your secrets and your mess. How many people boast of their love, but cannot be found when the real work begins? The hardest moments are the ones that never get spoken aloud. When the refrigerator is nearly empty, when bills arrive, when he comes home defeated but still manages a tired smile. In those moments, love is not a story, but a practice, folding laundry, sharing silence, standing together in the smallness of their lives. Jung wrote that love is not a possession, but a process, an endless act of seeing and being seen. She understands now what her mother meant when she said, "Find the one who shows up when it matters." Perhaps this isn't the love of fairy tales or epic poems, but it is the love that endures. The years pass. They change. There is no sudden magic, no wealth appearing to erase the struggle. But as she stands in the soft glow of the kitchen lamp, she knows this truth. Sometimes, the greatest gift is the hand that reaches for yours, even when there's nothing left to offer but presence. And in the quiet, with the weight of the world outside and the warmth of his steady breath beside her, she finds her answer. This isn't a fairy tale, but maybe it's something better. It's the story of how two people, with little more than patience and presence, make a life out of ordinary days and small kindnesses. There's no easy formula for happiness, no secret to always having enough. But perhaps the real wealth is found in the steady rhythm of showing up for each other every day, no matter what the world expects or how little you have to give. Carl Jung believed that love is not about possession or perfection, but about the courage to be seen as you are and to see another soul without illusion. In the end, what matters is not what you own, but what you offer: a listening ear, a steady hand, a heart that stays. Thank you for being here, for listening to this story, for searching with me for meaning in the everyday. If these words spoke to you, if you saw yourself in these lines, or if you simply want to be part of more honest conversations, subscribe to the channel and join our growing community. There are more stories ahead, more questions to explore. Until next time, remember, what you bring to the world matters, no matter how much or how little you have.